Well, good evening, and thank you so much for the invitation to share about Scripture Union Scotland here on Wednesday Night Live. My name is Dave Rickards, and I serve as the Director of National Ministries at SU Scotland, which means that I'm responsible for the schools and missions ministries. Over the last few weeks, we have seen the easing of lockdown restrictions here in Scotland, giving us hope that we will soon be back to level 2, and then maybe level 1. And it even looks like crowds will be allowed in time for the Euros, allowing some of Scotland's fans at least to descend on Hampden in the summer. Well, I'm not sure about you, but I don't know how I feel about the prospect of being part of a big crowd again. We're just not used to it anymore. But then maybe we were always slightly freaked out by crowds. How do you feel when you see a big group of people, particularly young people? What do you see as you look at them? And Jesus often encountered large crowds of people. He was, after all, an incredibly popular and powerful teacher and healer. But what did he see when faced with the masses? Matthew tells us that when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. The crowds, undoubtedly loud, probably demanding, and possibly a little bit intimidating, were really just a big flock of sheep, harassed and helpless without a shepherd to lead them. And when Jesus saw them, his heart broke, as it says in the message. Now, during lockdown, a small team of SU Scotland staff have been doing some research into the world of children and young people. And in many ways, it's heartbreaking. Here are just 3 of the statistics that they've uncovered. 1 in 10 children and young people, so ages 5 to 16, have a clinically diagnosable mental illness. 1 in 10. 1 in 3 pupils in Scotland have additional support needs. That's a third of children have additional support needs. And only 15% of young people say they believe in God. And that's a huge drop, even in the last 4 or 5 years, from the 32% of a similar survey by Youth for Christ in 2016. Now, that Youth for Christ study on faith found that more young people believe in ghosts than in God. And that many young people doubt that Jesus was even a real historical figure. And of course, some children have never heard about Jesus at all. Like the child who came along to an SU group in Edinburgh, who listened carefully to the Bible story and at the end raised his hand and asked just one question: who is Jesus? For so many of our young people, they are like that lost sheep, harassed and helpless, constantly searching for someone to follow, someone to look up to, but often finding themselves disappointed with the leaders and influencers on offer. If our hearts break for them in the way that Jesus' heart was broken for the crowds in his day, then we will want to ask, how can we help them? What can we do? How can we reach them with God's love? Back to Matthew 9. After weeping over the crowds, Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field." Now, the writers and speakers among us will know that you shouldn't mix your metaphors. And I know that's not exactly rocket surgery. But Jesus doesn't mix his metaphors here. He changes the image. Instead of sheep without a shepherd, he's now talking about fields without workers. which is just as heartbreaking, if not worse. Earlier this year, you may have seen the stories about daffodils rotting in fields across the UK as a combination of Brexit and COVID meant that the usual seasonal workers were unable to travel over from Europe. And just as sheep need a shepherd, so fields need harvesters. Now, Jesus knew what was required if the fields of people desperately in need of God's love were to be harvested. What was needed was prayer. Not prayer for the crowds per se, but prayer for workers to go out into the crowds. And actually, the change of metaphor really helps to highlight the nature of mission. It's about going out into the harvest field. Now, some sheep might wander into the fold by themselves, but wheat isn't going to come into the barn on its own, and daffodils don't pick themselves. So as we weep over the crowds of children and young people who are harassed and helpless, who are lost without Jesus, we too should pray for the Lord to send out workers into his harvest field. For how many children and young people will come wandering into our churches? But what does it mean for us to get out into the harvest field? At SU Scotland, we've been asking ourselves the question, how can we reach children and young people where they are? Well, where are they, you might ask? It's a really good question. Well, 702,197 of them are in school. At least they would be if there wasn't a pandemic. And school is a great place to begin helping kids to understand something about God, Jesus, and the Christian faith. Somewhat surprisingly, perhaps, that Youth for Christ survey showed that RME, religious and moral education lessons, are the second most significant factor in making young people think about God or spirituality. The number one factor was illness and death, interestingly. Now, as I'm sure you know, the Curriculum for Excellence here in Scotland promotes the understanding of different beliefs and cultures, including learning about the Bible and Christian festivals at primary school. And that gives us an incredible opportunity to help children explore the story of the Bible and the true meaning of Christmas and Easter. Now, in previous years, SU Scotland staff and volunteers would have run interactive lessons like Bubblegum and Fluff at Christmas and Easter Journey at, well, Easter. And some of you may have helped to run something like that for your local school. Last year, of course, we weren't able to get into schools. So we decided to try a different route and create a video-based resource that any teacher could use with their class. And here's a brief glimpse of what we were able to produce in partnership with SU Ireland.
There's absolutely no question. Christmas is my favourite time of the year. Everything is so colourful and jolly. All the shops have bright lights and decorations. I love how everyone gets into the giving mood and being friendly becomes the norm. It really is the most wonderful time of the year.
Are you the kind of person who likes surprises? Ooh. Oh. Or do you like to know the grand plan? I cannot cope with surprises. Whoa! I'm sweating just thinking about it. When I first got married, we had one golden rule. No jumping out from behind walls. Come on! Oh, it's not even funny. I just get angry. Like the kind of anger when you bite into what you think is a chocolate muffin, but the chocolate chips turn out to be raisins.
Ew.
There are other surprises that are much more enjoyable, like birthday parties, snow days, and finding a great toy in a Kinder Egg. But there is one surprise that's unlike any other, and it took place on that very first Easter.
There you go. Light up Christmas and colour in Easter. And the response to these resources has been fantastic. Somebody wrote in at Christmas, just after Christmas, thank you so much for this amazing resource. The kids were completely riveted. It's lovely to have 3 high quality RME lessons handed to me, completely ready to go. And one feedback which won the prize for the most adjectives was this one. These were excellent, bright, colourful, engaging, animated, fast-moving, funny, attention-grabbing, relevant, thought-provoking, and challenging. And the beauty of these resources is that they can be used by anyone, anywhere in the country. You don't need to have an SU staff member or a volunteer go in and run something in the school. The limitations forced on us by COVID actually inspired a new approach that has given us unlimited potential. And that's something we want to build on as we seek to reach children where they are at school. Now, there are great opportunities outside the classroom too, of course. Pre-COVID, over 6,000 children and young people were part of an SU group, a safe place to reflect and learn as they explore the Bible together, a place to grow and a place to make a difference in the lives of their friends and their school. Some groups have met online over the last 12 months, and a few even managed to meet face-to-face in the autumn. Like in Irvine, where the head teacher, who's not a Christian, volunteered to walk the kids from the school across the road to the local church so that they could have the SU group safely there. An indication of how much he values the role that the SU group has in the life of the children and the school. Now, looking ahead, we don't know what will happen in August, but we're praying, and please join us in praying that schools will be open to receiving volunteers again, and that we can get the SU groups up and running in the places where they were before, and by God's grace, see other groups start in various parts of the country. But of course, children and young people aren't just in school. Quite a few come to our outdoor centres and our campsites, either on a week-long school trip or for a holiday with their friends. Pre-pandemic, around 2,000 children and young people went on an SU holiday. Now, we did manage to do some online events in 2020, but there are young people all over Scotland who've missed out on the opportunity to enjoy amazing activities, make great friends, and discover more of God's love for them. Now, it's unlikely that we'll be able to offer the usual lineup of camps and holidays, but we are hoping to be able to run some activity days this summer. So please pray that those activity days will go ahead and that children and young people would sign up, that they would re-engage with SU activities and bring their friends with them. Of course, children and young people are out there in our communities as well. And sometimes mission in the community can feel like a really difficult and challenging part of getting out into the harvest field. Well, in 2019, about 1,000 children and young people attended a holiday club or a mission that was done in association with SU Scotland. At one point last year, it looked like we were going to have no missions at all. But then a small team got their thinking caps on, and the creative juices started to flow, and Scotland's biggest holiday club happened online across the country. We were unsure about what the summer of 2021 would look like, but in the hope that we could at least run something outside, the missions team have produced a new resource, Jungle Adventure, which can be used outdoors, and you can adapt it indoors if that's allowed in the summer. So check out the SU Scotland website for more information and a free taster of that material. Finally, we've been thinking a lot lately about where children and young people spend a lot of their time on their screens. In fact, research shows that children aged 5 to 16 spend an average of 6.3 hours per day on their screens. Again, the pandemic provided us with the opportunity to try new things. SUTV last Easter, and more recently, an outreach event, an online concert in partnership with the Message Trust. If we want to reach children and young people where they are, then we need to develop this digital ministry. And please pray with us. Pray for wisdom and discernment as we explore what we should do. You could ask the question, would that investment be worth it? Well, here's some feedback from the SUTV last year. I just watched day 9 and we've had a meaningful conversation about the cross and believing in God. And my boys started the conversation. And this from a young person. Can I just say thank you very much for filming and releasing all the videos. You've helped me find my love for being Christian again. Well, that's just a wee taste of what we've been up to at SU Scotland and where we hope to go. I've run out of time to talk about Equip events that strengthen the faith of those who love Jesus, Magnitude, our youth festival, and the different ways we seek to train and encourage young leaders. We'll leave those for another day, perhaps. But in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for your prayer and your support. And let me leave you with the same question that we're grappling with. As we recover from COVID and things open up, how might God be asking you to get out into the harvest field, the field around you, and offer hope, the hope of Jesus Christ, to this lost generation?